If you're looking for your next crochet blanket project, you've come to the right place. Today we're going to learn how to crochet this Basketweave stitch blanket. This pattern creates a warm and cozy and textured blanket that's still lightweight. You can make it as a gorgeous throw blanket or as a delightful crochet baby blanket. Don't let the intricate design of the Basketweave stitch make you nervous. It's actually very simple, and I'm going to show you step by step how to make this blanket from start to finish, including the moss stitch border, which I think really complements the blanket body beautifully.
Hello from Halifax. I'm Jo with Jo the World Creations.
We're going to be getting right to the video tutorial. More details such as the amount of yarn required, the yarn that I used, as well as the step-by-step written instructions, they're all available for free on my website, and there's a link to that in the description below this video. For the entire blanket body, use a J hook. We're going to start by making a slip knot. Place your slip knot on your hook and pull tight. Now we're going to chain 132. For this video tutorial, I'll be making a small swatch and I'm going to chain 20. You go ahead and make your starting chains and come back to the video. With your starting chains now made, we're going to begin row 1. For all of row 1, we're going to be working into the back ridge loops, which are these bumps along the back. We're going to start by working into the third chain from the hook. Here's the first, second, and third. In this third chain, we're going to rotate our work and find that third back ridge loop, insert our hook into it, and we're going to double crochet. Working in the third chain from the hook, yarn over, insert your hook into that third back ridge loop, and double crochet. We are now going to double crochet in each chain all the way across, always working into these back ridge loops. Working into the next back ridge loop, we're going to double crochet. And simply double crochet in each chain, always working into these back ridge loops all the way across. You go ahead and do that and then come back to the video. I'm almost finished working all the way across. I have one last chain to work into. Nothing special happens, still working into this back ridge loop. Make your final double crochet stitch. At the end of round 1, if you're making the full blanket, you should have 130 double crochet stitches. In my swatch where I chained 20, I have 18 completed double crochet stitches. To start row 2, we're going to chain 1 and we're going to turn. We're going to work into the first stitch. This is the stitch that's attached to the chain 1 we just made. And into this stitch, we're going to half double crochet. Working into this first stitch, half double crochet. You may find it helpful to place a stitch marker in the top of this first half double crochet. So I'm going to do that now. Now we're going to start the repeat portion of the row. This is what we're going to be repeating all the way across until the very last stitch. The first part of the repeat is to make a front post double crochet stitch around the next 4 stitches. When we make our front post double crochet stitch, we're going to be working around the body of the stitch, not the top. We are not going to be working under the top 2 loops. We're going to insert our hook from right to left, going from front to back around this first stitch. So we're going to insert our hook from right to left and then coming out of the other side of that stitch. The first step is to yarn over. Now we're going to insert our hook to the right of that next stitch from front to back, and then bring our hook out to the left of the stitch. Now we're going to yarn over and pull the yarn through the stitch. We now have 3 loops on our hook, and we're going to finish our double crochet stitch as we normally would. Yarn over, pull that yarn through the first 2 loops, 2 loops left on our hook, yarn over and pull the yarn through both remaining loops. And there's our first front post double crochet stitch. Now we're going to make our next front post double crochet stitch, working around the post of the next stitch. We're leaving the top of the stitch unworked, only working around the post of the next stitch. Yarn over, insert your hook to the right, and then coming out of the left, and there's our second of 4 front post double crochet stitches. Let's work around the next stitch. One more to go around the next stitch. And there we've just made 4 front post double crochet stitches around those 4 stitches. The next and final part of the repeat portion of the row is to make a back post double crochet stitch around the next 4 stitches. We're going to make our first back post double crochet stitch around the post of the next stitch. When we make a back post double crochet stitch, we insert our hook from the back to the front, still to the right of the stitch, and then we're going to come out of the left of it, but it's going to look like this. And once again, we're only going to be working around the posts of this stitch. We will be leaving the tops of stitches unworked. To make our first back post double crochet stitch, we're going to yarn over, insert our hook from back to the front, coming out of our work to the right of the stitch that we're working on, and then to the left of it. So it pops out the back here. Now we're going to yarn over, pull the yarn through the stitch, and now finish our double crochet stitch like we normally would. There's our first back post double crochet stitch. Now we're going to make another one. There's our second of 4, working around the post of the next stitch. We have 3 back post double crochet stitches so far. Let's make our 4th and final one around the next stitch. And there's our 4. We're going to be repeating those steps all the way across the row until there is 1 stitch left. Let's do it one more time together. We are going to front post double crochet around the next 4 stitches. Working around the post of the next stitch, we insert our hook from front to back and around the stitch and double crochet. There's 1. 2. 3. And 4. And the last part of the repeat is to make a back post double crochet around the next 4 stitches. Working around the post of the next stitch, insert your hook from back to front and double crochet. There's 1. There's 2. 3. And this is the 4th stitch we're going to work around. And there's our 4 back post double crochet stitches. You go ahead and repeat those steps all the way across the row until you have 1 stitch left. When you have 1 stitch left, it's going to look like this. It can get a little tricky to see, especially in this row, which one is the last stitch of the row. That's why we're going to use a stitch marker from now on. To finish the row, we are going to half double crochet in the last stitch, and we're going to be working under the top 2 loops of this last stitch. To help you find this last stitch, you can see that there's the 2 starting chains that we skipped. We're not working into those. And the stitch beside it is the top of the last stitch that we made our back post double crochet stitch. So we're not working in that. We're not working in the starting chains. Here's the last stitch that we are going to crochet into. We're going to make a half double crochet, working normally under the top 2 loops. Working into this last stitch, half double crochet. If you're making the full blanket, you should have a total of 130 stitches. 64 front post double crochet stitches, 64 back post double crochet stitches, and then 2 half double crochet stitches, one at the start and one at the end. In this pattern, chains, so the chain 1 that we made to begin the row does not count as a stitch. Now we're going to start row 3. We are going to be repeating the exact same thing that we just did for row 2. Chain 1 and turn your work. Working into the top of the first stitch, we're going to half double crochet. In the first stitch, half double crochet. I'm going to place a stitch marker in the top of this first stitch. Now we're going to front post double crochet around the next 4 stitches. And you can easily tell where to work because we're going to be making our front post double crochet stitches around the front post double crochet stitches from the row below. When we go to make our first front post double crochet stitch, once again we're inserting our hook from the front to the back and around the post of the stitch below. So here's the post of the stitch below that we'll be working around. There's 1. 2. 3. And 4. Now we're going to make back post double crochet stitches around the next 4 stitches. We're going to insert our hook from the back to the front, working around the post of the stitch below, which is this post right here. So we're working around the post right here, but we'll be working like this. There's 1. There's 2. 3. And 4. You go ahead and repeat these steps all the way across the row until there is 1 stitch left. I've just repeated those steps all the way across the row, and I have 1 last stitch to work into, and it's the stitch with the stitch marker. I'm now going to remove this marker, but make a mental note of exactly where you're going to be working into. Working into the top of this last stitch, we're going to half double crochet. In the top of this last stitch, under both loops, half double crochet. Now we're going to start row 4. To start row 4, we're going to chain 1 and turn. We're going to work into the very first stitch, the top of the first stitch, which is the stitch that's attached to that chain we just made, and into this first stitch, half double crochet. And you may find it helpful to place a stitch marker in the top of that first stitch. Now we're going to begin the repeat portion of the row. The first step is to make a back post double crochet stitch around the next 4 stitches. We're going to be doing the exact opposite from what we've done for the last 2 rows. Instead of making a front post double crochet stitch first, we're going to make 4 back post double crochet stitches. When we go to make our back post double crochet stitch, we're going to be coming from back to front, and we're going to be working around the post of the stitch from the row below. So here's this post right here. We're going to come in from back to front and go around it and make our stitch. Yarn over, insert your hook from the back to the front around that post of the stitch below, and then pull the yarn through and double crochet normally. There's our first back post double crochet stitch. We're going to do that a total of 4 times. There's 2. 3. And 4. And the final part of the repeat is to make 4 front post double crochet stitches. We're going to be working around the post of the stitch from the row below. So we'll insert our hook from front to back around the post of this stitch right here. Make our first of 4 front post double crochet stitches. There's 1. 2. 3. And 4. You go ahead and repeat those steps all the way across the row until you have 1 stitch left. This is the stitch with the stitch marker. I'm almost finished working all the way across. I have 1 more front post double crochet stitch to make. This last stitch in the repeat can sometimes be a little tricky to see, so wanted to point out that if you are having troubles, you can just pull your work apart a little bit so you can differentiate between this last post stitch that we're going to make, which is right here, and then this is the last stitch that we'll work into after we complete the repeat. So working around this last post, we're going to make our final front post double crochet stitch. Make our final front post double crochet stitch. And into this last stitch, the stitch with the stitch marker, we're going to half double crochet. You can remove the marker, and into this last stitch, half double crochet. Here's my last stitch, making one half double crochet stitch. Every row in this pattern has the exact same number of stitches. Now we're going to start row 5, and we're going to do the exact same thing and repeat row 4. To start row 5, we're going to chain 1 and turn. Working into the first stitch, the stitch attached to the chain, we're going to half double crochet. Place a marker in that first stitch, and we're going to begin the repeat portion of the row, which starts off by making a back post double crochet stitch around the next 4 stitches. We're going to work around the post from the stitch below, insert our hook from back to front, and work around the post, and this post is right here. Make our first back post double crochet stitch. Make a total of 4. Here's 2. 3. And 4. And the final part of the repeat is to make a front post double crochet around the next 4 stitches. We're going to be inserting our hook from front to back around the post of the stitch below. One, 2, 3, and 4. You go ahead and repeat those steps all the way across the row until you have 1 stitch left. I've just repeated those steps all the way across. I now have 1 stitch left to work into. I'm going to remove the stitch marker, and into the top of this last stitch, half double crochet. Top of the last stitch, half double crochet. For the rest of the blanket body, for row 6 and on, you're going to repeat rows 2 to 5 consecutively until the height of your blanket body matches your width. That's if you'd like a square blanket. Or you can continue repeating rows 2 to 5 consecutively until you reach your desired height. Ensure you finish the blanket body by completing a row 5. We just completed a row 5, and after you finish a row 5, then you can start the blanket border. The height of my completed blanket body was 34 inches, and I made a total of 93 rows. After you've reached your desired height and made sure that you've finished after a row 5, do not fasten off. Come back to the video and we will do the border together. I've just finished my blanket body. I've just finished completing a row 5. So you'll see I have 2 rows of front post double crochet stitches completed at the end. This is the right side of the blanket. You can tell which is the right and which is the wrong side based on the starting tail. Your starting tail should be on your left. Now the blanket is completely reversible. It looks the same on both sides. But as we make our border, we're going to be working on the right side for the entire border. For the entire border, we're going to use a K hook. So we're going to go up a hook size for the border. And we're also going to crochet loosely as we make all of our border stitches. We don't want to crochet too tightly because we don't want the border to pull on the blanket body. To start border round 1, we're going to chain 1. We are not going to turn. We're going to start by working down the side. I'm going to rotate my work so it's easier to see. We're going to be working down the side, and we're going to work into the stitches at the ends of each row. We can work under 2 loops, so we can insert your hook under 2 loops or 1 loop, but we don't want to insert our hook into these large spaces. We want to work into the stitches at the ends of rows. We're going to be making single crochet stitches all the way down the side. Working down the side and into stitches, we are going to make 6 evenly spaced out single crochet stitches every 4 rows. Here's the end of 1 row, a 2nd row, a 3rd row, and a 4th row. So in this area right here, we're going to make 6 evenly spaced out single crochet stitches. The exact placement of these stitches is not important. And actually the exact number of stitches is not important. But I tested this out repeatedly and found that having 6 evenly spaced out single crochet stitches every 4 rows will help ensure you have enough single crochet stitches down the side so that the border doesn't pull on the blanket body. Here's a group of 4 rows that we'll make our first single crochet stitches into. Now let's look at the next group of 4 rows. Here's row 1, row 2, row 3, and row 4. So we'll make another 6 single crochet stitches in this area here, and we'll be doing this all the way down. Starting at the end of this first row, insert your hook into any stitch at the end of this row under 2 loops or 1, and let's make our first single crochet stitch. Let's place a stitch marker in the top of this first single crochet stitch. We've just made our first single crochet stitch, and we want to make 5 more in this area right here. Again, exact stitch placement is not important. You just want to make sure your single crochet stitches are evenly spaced apart. I've made 3 so far, and I have this much more area to work into. And this is just to help you ensure you have enough stitches so that the border doesn't pull on the blanket body. There's 5, 1 more. There are 6 evenly spaced out single crochet stitches in a 4-row area. So keep going down and make 6 single crochet stitches every 4 rows. And you're going to do that all the way down until you get to this first row of double crochet stitches on the bottom of the side and come back to the video. I just finished single crocheting almost all the way down the side. If you recall, in the blanket body, we started the blanket body by making a row of double crochet stitches. To finish working down the side, we're going to make 1 single crochet into this double crochet stitch right here before the bottom. Working into the end of row 1 here, make 1 single crochet stitch. Now I'm going to rotate my work so we can work into the bottom. We're going to start by working into the first chain, and we're always going to be working under both loops of these chains. Starting in the first chain, we're going to make our first corner, and we're going to do 3 things. In this first chain, we're going to start by making a single crochet stitch. Now we're going to chain 2, and working in the same chain, we're going to make another single crochet stitch. And this creates our first corner chain 2 space. Now we're going to work into each chain all the way across under both loops and simply make 1 single crochet stitch in each chain along the bottom until there's 1 chain left. You go ahead and make 1 single crochet stitch in each chain all across the bottom until there's 1 chain left. I've just finished making a single crochet in each chain across the bottom. I have 1 last chain to work into. Into this last chain, we are going to single crochet, chain 2, and make a single crochet in the same chain. And this is going to create our second corner chain 2 space. Now let's rotate our work, and we're going to work up the side. We are going to do the exact same thing up the side that we did when we worked down the side. The first step is to make 1 single crochet stitch at the end of the first row, right here. Working into the end of the first row, find a good spot and make 1 single crochet stitch. Now we're going to make 6 evenly spaced out single crochet stitches every 4 rows. So in this area here, I'm going to make 6 single crochet stitches. In this area here, which is 4 rows, approximately 6. And then here's my last example, but you would do this all the way up. Every 4 rows, make 6 single crochet stitches. Let's make our first 6 together. Working under 1 loop or 2. The exact stitch placement is not important. The goal is just to have 6 evenly spaced out single crochet stitches every 4 rows. And just a reminder to make sure that you're crocheting loosely and not too tightly. There's 4, 5, and 6. You go ahead and repeat this all the way up the side. I've just repeated that all the way up the side. Now we're going to rotate our work to work along the top. We're going to start by working in the top of this first stitch. Working into this first stitch, we are going to single crochet, chain 2, and make a single crochet in the same stitch. This is our third corner chain 2 space. Now we're going to make 1 single crochet in each stitch across the top until there is 1 stitch left. You go ahead and make 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch across the top and come back to the video. I've just finished working almost all the way across the top. I have 1 stitch left. In the top of this last stitch, we are going to single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet in the same stitch. This is our fourth and final corner chain 2 space. After completing this last single crochet stitch, we are not going to join the round. This completes the instructions for border round 1. To start the border round 2, we're going to chain 1. We are not going to turn. The first thing we're going to do is single crochet in the first stitch from the previous round. This is the stitch with the stitch marker. We're going to go ahead and remove this stitch marker and then single crochet into that stitch. We're not making a slip stitch. We're going right from making that first chain one that we did to making a single crochet in this first stitch. Working into this first stitch, single crochet. The space between the last single crochet stitch that we made in the previous round and then that chain one that we made just now to start border round 2, and then this first single crochet stitch, this space right here, this is our first chain one space. We are going to place a stitch marker in this chain one space. There's my stitch marker in between the single crochet stitches and under that chain one. Now we're going to begin the repeat portion of the round. The first thing we're going to do is chain one. We are going to skip the next stitch. We're not going to work in the next stitch. In the next stitch, single crochet. So chain one, skip the next stitch. In the next stitch, single crochet. And this is what we're going to be repeating until the corner chain two space. Chain one, skip the next stitch. In the next stitch, single crochet. You go ahead and repeat those steps until you're getting close to the corner chain two space and come back to the video. I've been repeating that and I'm nearing my first chain two space. The chain two space is the space between the 2 single crochet stitches that we made in the corner and under the chain 2. This is where we're going to be working into in the corner. Depending on how many stitches you have on your side, the stitch before working into this chain 2 space might be a single crochet or it might be a skipped stitch, and it doesn't matter what it is. So if you don't have the exact right number of stitches to follow the pattern exactly before working into the chain 2 space, that's absolutely okay. I've just single crocheted and I'm still going to follow the pattern until we get to that chain 2 space. So I'm going to chain one, skip the next stitch, in the next stitch, single crochet. But if your single crochet stitch is in the stitch right before the chain 2 space, that's okay. Either scenario is fine. What's really important is we want to make sure is after your last single crochet stitch, whether it's here or here, we now make a chain one before we begin to work into the corner chain 2 space. So follow these instructions whether your single crochet stitch is here or here. We're now going to chain one. And now working into the corner chain 2 space, we are going to single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet in the same chain 2 space. These are the steps we're going to be repeating all around the blanket. After working into the corner chain 2 space, chain one, skip the next stitch, in the next stitch, single crochet. And repeat chain one, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next stitch, all the way until the next chain 2 space. I'm now nearing the next chain 2 space. I've just single crocheted here, so I'm going to chain one, skip the next stitch, and on this side, my stitches, how they work out is I'm going to have a single crochet stitch in the stitch right before the next chain 2 space. But once again, anytime you're approaching a chain 2 space, it's okay if your last single crochet stitch is here or here. On this side, my last stitch is going to be the stitch right before. So I chain one, skip the next stitch, in the next stitch, single crochet. And no matter where your last single crochet stitch is, what's really important is that you chain one before working into the chain 2 space. And into the chain 2 space, single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet in the same space. You go ahead and repeat those steps all around the blanket. Your last step will be working into the fourth and final chain 2 space. I'm almost finished working all the way around. The last step is to work into the fourth and final chain 2 space. Nothing special happens. Chain 1 in the chain 2 space, single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet in the same space. After making your final corner, we are not going to join the round. That completes the instructions for border round 2. Now we're going to start border round 3. This is what we're going to be repeating for the rest of the border. To start, we're going to chain 1. We are not going to turn. We are going to make a single crochet stitch in the first chain 1 space. This is the space with the stitch marker. We can go ahead and remove this stitch marker, but make a mental note of this first chain 1 space because we're going to single crochet right here. We're not going to join with a slip stitch. We're going to go right from making that first chain 1 to making a single crochet stitch. Working in this first chain 1 space, single crochet. The space between this first single crochet stitch that we just made and the last single crochet stitch from the previous round under that chain 1 we just made to start the round, this creates our first chain 1 space of this round. And we're going to place our stitch marker right here. I've just placed my stitch marker in the first chain 1 space of this round. Now we're going to begin the repeat portion. We're going to chain 1. And we are going to single crochet in the next chain 1 space. This is the space between the single crochet stitches and under the chain 1. Into this space right here, we're going to make a single crochet stitch, making sure you've chain 1 first, then work into the chain 1 space and single crochet. Chain 1, working in the next chain 1 space, we're going to single crochet. And we're going to repeat these steps until the corner chain 2 space. Chain 1, the next chain 1 space, single crochet. You go ahead and do this until the corner chain 2 space. Just keep repeating chain 1 in the next chain 1 space, single crochet. I've been repeating those steps and I am almost at my corner chain 2 space. As you approach the corner, nothing special happens. Continue repeating those steps. So I've made a single crochet stitch here. I'm going to chain 1. This is my last chain 1 space before the corner chain 2 space. So in this last chain 1 space, single crochet. Now we're going to work in the corner. But before we work into the corner chain 2 space, we chain 1. And then working into the chain 2 space, we're going to single crochet, chain 2, and make another single crochet stitch into this corner chain 2 space. And these are the steps we're going to be repeating all around the blanket. After the corner chain 2 space, the repeat starts again. Chain 1, working in the next chain 1 space, single crochet, and repeat chain 1, working in the next chain 1 space, single crochet, And you're going to repeat that all the way until the next corner chain 2 space. You're going to repeat that all the way until the chain 2 space. When you're at the chain 2 space, chain 1, working into this chain 2 space, single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet in the same space. You go ahead and repeat those steps all around the blanket. I'm almost finished repeating those steps all the way around. I just have my last corner chain 2 space to work into. To work into this last corner, chain 1 into the corner, single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet in that same corner space. After completing this last corner, we do not join the round with a slip stitch. That completes the instructions for the round. For border rounds 4 to 6, you're going to repeat the exact same thing we just did and repeat border round 3. You can repeat border round 3 more or less times until you are happy with the size of your border. I stopped my border after completing border round 6. You go ahead and repeat border round 3 as many times as you like. For the size that I made, stop after border round 6 and you do the exact same thing we just did. Once you're happy with the size of your border, I'm going to now show you how to finish the border and finish the blanket. Let's pretend that this is the size that I wanted my border to be. You will have just finished your last corner. So after this last corner, you're going to chain 1. We're going to skip this first single crochet stitch. We're not going to work into that. We're not going to work into the chain 1 space. We can actually now remove this stitch marker as we're not going to work into this space. We are going to slip stitch into the top of the next single crochet stitch. We're going to slip stitch right here to finish the blanket border. I'm going to remove this stitch marker. So we're not going to work into this single crochet stitch. We're not working into the chain or the chain 1 space. We're going to slip stitch into the top of this next single crochet stitch. Just a reminder, I've chained 1 after that last corner. Working into the top of this single crochet stitch, we're going to slip stitch to join. And once you weave in your loose ends, I found this is nice and hidden and blends in with the rest of the border. All that's left now to do is to fasten off. I like to leave an approximate 8-inch tail. Pull that tail through the loop that was on your hook and pull tight. And now with a yarn needle, weave in all your loose ends. And now you have a new Basketweave stitch blanket. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I really hope you enjoy making this blanket. If you have any questions or if there's anything I can do to help, please let me know. If you enjoyed this video, I would be delighted if you could give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you again and have a wonderful day.